Good morning, my fellow classmates and judges. Today, my group and I will be discussing the reasons why we feel that the Confederate flag should be brought down. Now, I know this is a bit different than what we're used to, but I would like everyone to close your eyes. Imagine it's 1960s Rocky Mount. The house is quiet and still. As you and your family are drifting off to sleep, to the cicadas singing in the big oak tree by your window, you're awakened by shotgun noises blasting into the air. A light illuminates your window, and you look outside to see men in white sheets carrying torches and burning across the yard. Then you hear the clash of glass into your house, and the last thing you see before you run outside of your house is the Confederate flag waving high into the air. Today, as you can see, the introduction has already been done, but we will be giving the background history, the symbol of heritage, a hate organization, and we will also be talking about would things be different if the South won.
Many have ideas of what the Confederate flag means. What do you think it means? Do you think? Do you think it's a symbol of heritage, culture, or history? I think it's part of history. Do you think it's a symbol of racism, oppression, and slavery, or just representing the Confederacy?
Okay, so before we talk about removing the flag and actually we have to find out like what the flag really consists of and what the people who float on the flag, like what were their ideas, what were their beliefs when it comes to slavery. So the North and the South were already divided when it comes to ideas of slavery. People in the North began to see and the injustices, the wrongs when it came to treating somebody who's just human, just like you. Their skin was darker. But the thing about it was, the real eye-opener was Harriet Beecher Stowe when Uncle Tom's Cabin. They talked about the real injustices of slavery, and the thing about it, it was from white women. So the thing, so in 1860, Abraham Lincoln began going across the country and talking about his platform, and it was the South began to see that he was starting to win, and one of his main points was gradually stopping slavery south of the Mason-Dixon line. He just wanted consistent. He didn't want it to spread. But further into the Civil War, he began to see that he wanted to abolish slavery. But when the South started to see that Lincoln was winning, they succeeded in December the 20th, 1860. Along with it, 7 months later, 7 states succeeded with it, some being Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, other states, and they conformed the CSA, which is the Confederate States of America. And from this, their main points was protect the tariffs, states' rights, and most importantly, slavery. So when you talk to people and get their ideas on the Southern flag, mainly the white people, they talk about it was their similar heritage, like their great-grandfathers or their ancestors fought in the war. But you got to think about what does your heritage really consist of, or who are the people that are really talking about your heritage, like what were they? And for one, when you talk about heritage, you got to include people like John Wilkes Booth, which is a person who actually assassinated President Lincoln, and which was the president of the United States at that time. And the Confederate actually set up where he could assassinate him. Supposedly, he was supposed to kidnap him, but John Wilkes Booth took it into his own initiative to assassinate him. Assassinate President Lincoln, a person who was supposed to be a progressive leader, stopping slavery. You also got to think about a person like Bull Connor. Bull Connor was a person when it came to the civil rights in Mississippi. He was a Mississippi governor, and he had rights over the police and the fire department. And you can see videos online with him unleashing the dogs and the fire hoses when it came to civil rights and when it came to marches. And you actually get letters from Birmingham from Bull Connor. And people like these supporting these ideas, you got to think about, okay, that during the time when you talked about heritage, they said that some people may say, okay, my great grandfather, he didn't own slaves, or he was just a farmer. But when you think about the South and the society, the black Negro was always low in that society. Even though the white person may not have slaves, the rich people had slaves. You got to think that you got a little farm, you got a big farm. So they really didn't like the ideas of slaves and what they consisted of. They didn't see the black Negro as being equal to them. So when you think about it, what if the South would have won? Do you think things like rules or regulations would to support black lives so it can be safe, do you think that would have came about? And my main points were the 13th Amendment. If the South would have won, or the Confederate would have won, well, we have things like the 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery over all the United States. Would you have things like the 14th Amendment, which said that any African American born in the United States is a citizen and the rules and rights should be abided by them? And you have the 15th Amendment, which is the right to suffrage, the right to vote for black people. Things like this, do you think that if the South would have won, that these would be incorporated into the lives of black people? Probably not, because they wanted to preserve their lifestyle of being having slaves, and because slaves was most importantly when it came to economically supported the South and the society.
Okay, so I will be discussing the flag's effects on race. First, Caucasian Southerners. First and foremost, paying homage, like a lot of you have already stated. The flag originally began, if you do your research, with Southern pride. So going on being a rebel, a lot of, back in that time, teens during that time, it was more like a rebellion against society. If you were hip to the Confederate flag, you were a rebel. Having their own beliefs and ideas, of course, that's where the racism comes in. You have your white Southerners who did not like black people, obviously, or minorities, and they use the flag as a symbol of hatred and stir that up. So originally, it did not begin that way. Minorities, racial inequality, of course, minorities and African Americans were treated differently because of this flag and because of the meaning that a lot of white Southerners drawn around it. Racial prejudice is the same thing. Blacks were discriminated on, treated differently. Black people see it as not being respected. A lot of people feel as if it is a hate symbol and it doesn't really bring any good to African Americans or minorities, or if you're not in the white supremacy or the white race. Institutional racism, it was also used in a lot of white schools that black kids could not go to. So, yeah.
Although some Southerners feel strongly that the Confederate flag represents their heritage and Southern pride, it has become a symbol of hatred and oppression. It is a symbol that is actively being used in an act of violence. So let's go on the first point. The flag is a symbol of racism, hatred, and oppression. According to the Huffington Post in March, Americans by 10% point margin that the flag represents Southern pride more than racism. Now, with these things that we have seen recently in the news, it's by a 6-point margin. They see it primarily as a symbol of racism. And in the past, it has been used to support acts of oppression. According to the Yale Law Journal, Governor George Wallace raised the flag as a part of his Segregation Forever campaign. So it is a constant reminder that not only in the past but recently, this flag is a symbol of racism and hatred and oppression, especially in African Americans into society. And also, this is a good image. It says officials are still trying to fathom the roots of the shooter's hatred. So I'm ready for the next one. These are 10 lives that's been affected by, and the first one is going to be Emmett Till. He had a speech problem, and a white lady thought that he was flirting with her, and he was killed. The second was Medgar Evers, and he served in the World War II, and he was part of the civil rights movement, and he was shot by a person who believed that he was better than him because he was fighting for his rights. And the most recent act of violence was, this happened in South Carolina when an individual came into the most holiest place and gunned down 9 people. But what's more shocking is that he was only 21 years old, and he posed proudly the flag that he'd been, for a long time, he felt that racism manifested online before he went and killed all these people. He used a Confederate flag to show his statement regarding his dislike of minority groups, and took his own power and took his hand to make a statement. Not only has history repeated itself in a new century with the most advanced country, but it's with more open-minded people. This event reminds us of a shameful past, and it's still happening now.
As we take a look at this picture, could someone tell me what do you think when you see this?
Black Pride.
Think of Black Pride? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. When I see this flag, I believe that this picture was taken in support of the taking out of the Confederate flag. As you all know, the Confederate flag was never the official flag for the Confederacy. This flag that they wave now was to support Northern Virginia's army, one of their Confederate armies. And the designer of the flag, William P. Miles, created this flag to symbolize white supremacy. So, next slide. Okay, this information was taken from PBS.org. When people see the Confederate flag, 1 out of 10 people only see it as positive. 58% of people have neutral feelings when they see the flag. And 30% of people who see the Confederate flag react negatively about it. And among that 30% of people are African Americans and highly educated people.
Okay, so in conclusion, I want you to think about any kind of country or society in the world, and that they say they have a civil war. For starters, say they have conflict, and a conflict leads to different theories and a division, and that division leads to a civil war. Okay, do you know any state or any country that the losing side was still able to fly their flag, the losing side's flag? Anybody? This is because by having that flag still up, by people still flying that flag, the losing side, it shows division. And usually the people who win the war usually writes the rules of that society. And so by still having that flag up, it goes against what that society really is. And also that when you think about the Confederate flag, you really don't think about how it ties into giving back to the community, or how it helps black people, or how it helps minorities. When you think about the Confederate flag, the first thing I think about is, KKK, or depression, or oppression, civil rights, people who are oppressed to civil rights. And by flying that on Capitol grounds, it's kind of like a double standard. Like, okay, maybe it's tribute to the soldiers, but for other people, it's like, okay, these are people who abused or violated my people. So I think that for all, that the flag should come down. So that's it.
Okay, well, I guess we can begin the